Chapter 8, we look at unemployment and the types of unemployment and the reasons for unemployment. Um, with the recession we just had, unemployment reached a very high numbers, as high as it's been in quite a few years, actually since the Great Depression. So we look at unemployment and see how that cyclical unemployment, the idea that the unemployment that is due to recession, how that affects the economy. Here's an example of a company that went out of business, causing some unemployment. The people that were unemployed because of the recession, people that were unemployed because businesses closed down or closed factories or closed down production, are products of cyclical unemployment, meaning that the cycles of the economy has caused that unemployment. This slide depicts the labor force and the people that are not in the labor force. To be in the labor force, you have to either be employed or unemployed. Labor force is calculated by adding the employed plus the unemployed. To be considered part of the employed, you have to be 16 years or older and working. To be considered part of the unemployed, you have to be 16 years or over, able and willing to work, and then actively seeking work. You have to meet those three qualifications to be considered unemployed. You have to be able to be 16 years or older, that age requirement. You have to be willing and able. So disabled people are not able to work, so they're not considered part of that unemployment or part of that labor force. And you have to be actively seeking work. If you're not actively seeking work, you're not considered unemployed, so you're not considered part of that labor force. As you can see, just like the economy, the unemployment rate kind of goes in cycles. In the United States, we go from highs to lows. Our highest rate of unemployment was back during the Great Depression. We hit a high of 25, a little over 25% unemployment, meaning a fourth of the people in the U.S. were out of work. Back in this last recession, which we depict as the Great Recession, we've had a high of 10.1% unemployment, which has been pretty much the highest since the Great Recession. As you can see from this slide, we're depicting the demographics of unemployment. We can see in that first slide that females and males, uh, the uh, the difference there. Back in the was it 90s, early 90s, we had a higher rate of male unemployment. From there, it went on hand in hand until here recently during this recessionary period. Now we have a higher rate of male unemployment. Um, the age factor considers that the teenagers, the younger people, are suffer more from unemployment than the people in the older age brackets, simply because they're the newer people. They usually have uh, the less important jobs, so they're the first ones to be laid off. And then we can see by race, we can see that the blacks have a little higher rate of unemployment than the Hispanics and the whites. With the supply and demand graph, we can look at the supply of labor and the wage rate and do a equilibrium point to where the wage rate equals the quantity of labor supplied. In this particular example, demand is the demand for workers. The employer's demand for workers, supply is the amount of workers. And we reach that equilibrium point to where we have a market clearing price. In other words, all the workers that are supplied are demanded by employers. If something happens to increase the wage rate, if that wage rate gets up above that equilibrium point, we have unemployment. One of the things that might do this is a minimum wage increase. We have a minimum wage increase. Our wage rate is over that equilibrium wage point. We cause unemployment. Most of the time, that's unemployment of the teenage workers, the ones that are working at that minimum wage rate. If an employer is paying, has $20 an hour to pay in wages, and the equilibrium wage is $5 an hour. If all of a sudden that wage goes up to $10 an hour, instead of hiring 4 people, now they're going to hire 2 people, so 2 people are unemployed. Uh, this slide shows two graphs. The first one looking at the rising demand for labor. With the rising demand for labor, the wages would rise. A good example of this is the nursing industry. The supply is remaining pretty constant on nurses. Our demand is increasing with nurses, although we are actually supplying a few more nurses, but the demand is increasing because people are aging and they need more nursing care. Because of that, the demand for nurses is increasing, which is bringing that prevailing wage up. The second graph B is depicting a decrease in the demand for employees, and this could happen in a recessionary period. Recessionary period, the workers are laid off. They're looking for work at their own wage rate, at their prevailing wage, and they're not able to find any, so they're unemployed. They become fewer employees employed, which leads to that lower wage rate.